Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. This is your host Carmina, astrologer, card reader, and human design enthusiast. And today we have with us astrologer Rok Koritnik. Welcome, Rok.
Yeah, thank you, Carmina, for having me.
I've known Rok for more than a year, maybe 2 years, and I know that he's been heavily into researching the concept of Vargas. Because, on this channel we mainly discuss Vedic astrology. However, it's important to also see some other perspectives that maybe, complete or gap some bridges that we are lacking, or just, see a new and fresh perspective. And Rok, I know that he's been really researching the Vargas, and that's why he's here with us today to share a little bit of that research with us, and especially with methods from Hellenistic astrology.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, what prompted you to start researching this with Hellenistic astrology?
Well, actually, first I began with modern Western astrology, and then eventually I got interested in Vedic astrology, especially Jaimini system, because it was so different and enigmatic. But of course, immediately when you come to Vedic astrology, there are Vargas, the divisions of the zodiac, which at first you believe that, okay, this is something that we don't find in Western astrology at all. But what was later, a big surprise when I discovered, the older Western astrology, the Hellenistic astrology, is that actually various divisions were also used there, in the very early we can say Western astrology. So it was not necessarily unique to the Vedic astrology, especially when you go a little bit further back, before Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra was discovered or recompiled or whatever, is that the earlier authors, Varahamihira, Kalyan Varma, they were not using so many Vargas as we're using today, the Shodasha Varga scheme, the 16. Basically, they were using 6 or 7 Vargas. So that actually raised some questions, okay, if these masters of astrology were using only 6 or 7 Vargas, or, in the Hellenistic world, there was one great astrologer called Vettius Valens. He actually used, 2 or 3 Vargas only.
What did they name? What did they refer to about these divisional charts? Did they call them divisional charts or Vargas, or what did they?
No, they don't give names. They they name each of them, but as far as I know, it's just like divisions, because they were not making charts out of them. And this is, one of the issues that I wanted to solve. The question: should we make Varga charts or not, or are these just divisions to give us, some information like dignity and so on? And actually, when I started to read, Brihajataka and Saravali, and also Parashara Hora afterwards, it's kind of clear that these authors were not drawing separate Varga charts, but were only using them to see the ruler. That's basically what it was. To see the ruler in each division, and then they would look at what kind of yoga this ruler is forming to the planet it's ruling in a particular division. So it was all done back in the Rashi chart. No one would draw a separate chart and count new houses from that ascendant and so on. But today we see that many people are using charts, so you would say, for example, make a Drakana chart. And the ascendant would be different in the Drakana chart. It can be different. So one would count new houses from that ascendant. So, you get the new 5th house, so to say. And in each Varga chart, you have a different fifth house. So suddenly you have 16 fifth houses, which can be, a little bit, like, whoa, what do I do with all this? So yeah, this was basically the main question that actually made me took this research. And actually, the findings are quite surprising because it's not as simple as one would like. It's just, okay, should we make Varga charts or not? And the answer is actually yes and no. Because what's most interesting is that we have two different types of Vargas, two different types of divisions. And this is something that I would like to talk about today. And unfortunately, in the Middle Ages, these two different systems of divisions somehow were brought together and began to be used together. But according to what I found is that these are two very different types of divisions and are meant for different purposes.
Yeah.
So if you allow me, I would just share my screen, and I think the best way to do it is just to look at it graphically.
Yeah, so what would be like the main changes, the main, that you noticed?
Yeah, I will demonstrate it here.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. It's the wrong screen. I mean, is this seen? Do you see the graphic?
Yes, I see Leo and...
All right, great. So this is, I would call this a contemporary Drakana. This is what we find with Varahamihira, Kalyanvarma, and Parashara.
Mm-hmm.
So what Parashara says for this Drakana is that the three portions, which are of 10 degrees, belong to three planets. The first one belongs to the ruler of the sign itself. The second one to the ruler of the fifth sign from it, and the third one to the ruler of the ninth sign from it. So basically what we have is the trine rulers, right?
Yes.
These are three planets that are ruling signs of the same element. So what's it based on is the dignity. The principle here is dignity. Okay, how much say do these three planets have in the matters pertaining to this sign? And yes, sure. In this case, Sun and Jupiter, which would be better demonstrated here, because although Parashara says, okay, it belongs to the sign itself, to the fifth sign and the ninth sign, it's actually all about the rulers, because we can't just break the zodiac like this. Zodiac has its natural order. So here we have the rulers for each sign. And this is actually what all these, I would say, medieval authors are suggesting, that we should simply look at the ruling planet of a particular sector of a sign. So for the Drakana, we have the trine lords. So the trine lords have some dignity in the sign because they rule the same element. While for the Chaturtamsha, we have the angle lords. We have the lords of all the signs that are angular from the sign in question. So in this case, we have, for Drakana, we have the same element. Here we have the same modality. Because signs that are angular from each other, they share modality. So here, yeah, okay, Aries is cardinal sign. It's a movable sign. So all the rulers of movable signs have some say, in matters pertaining to this sign. So this is the logic behind the divisions that are there in Parashara Hora, Brihajataka, Saravali, so on, all the classics. But it's not that they are always done in the same way. For example, the Drakana, if you go a little bit back, here we have the trine lords. But Yavana Jataka, a very interesting text, which is supposedly the earliest horoscopic text of India, does it differently. He says that the first Drakana belongs to the Lord of the sign, and then the second to the Lord of the 12th from that sign.
And that's quite different.
Yeah, and the third to the ruler of the 11th. So it's very different. That's actually the only text that has such a Drakana. The other ones all have this kind of triplicity on Drakana. So this is one way of doing the Varga. You are concerned with splitting a sign in various parts. So 3 for Drakana, 4 for Chaturtamsha. And it has a particular rule, as we have seen. But then on the other hand, Jaimini and the early commentators of Jaimini suggest that the Drakana should not be done like that, but it should be what we call a Parivriti Drakana. Parivriti is basically a word for harmonic. You know, in Western astrology today, we call this harmonic divisions because it is free-flowing. We can see that the zodiacal order is free-flowing. It's not interrupted in any way. So in case of Drakana, we have the zodiac repeating 3 times throughout the circle. And it repeats at fire signs. You know, it starts with Aries, and then starts with Leo, and starts with Sagittarius. So what we have here is a trine. You can see that when we connect different instances of the same sign, it forms a perfect triangle. So Parivriti Vargas, the harmonic Vargas, are all about geometry and spatial relationships. We can, if we look back a little bit at the contemporary Drakana, this is not the case because the angular distance from this Leo to this Leo is different than from this Leo to this Leo.
I think it's like only 2 sides are equal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a perfect triangle in that sense that they are all share the same angle.
But for those of us, for those of the audience watching, what do you mostly use Drakana for? How important is it in astrology?
Okay, it's very different because you will find Drakana in all systems, but you will find also very different calculations. You know, for example, in Hellenistic astrology, mostly the Drakana rulers are assigned in the natural order of the planets, you know, by the speed of the planets, which is sometimes they call it the Chaldean order of the planets. Then we see that in Jaimini system, this type of Parivriti Drakana is used. And in Yavana Jataka, it's a different type of Drakana. And again, in Parashara, a different type. But they all are, all these medieval texts are giving characteristics. So they would look at, for example, the ascendant and see which Drakana it falls in. Which planet is the Drakana ruler? And the ascendant would immediately receive that type of energy, that type of nature. For example, if it falls in a Mars Drakana, okay, immediately, you know, there's a fiery, fighty,
undertone.
patient undertone to it. Yeah. And actually you have Yavana Jataka is full of these delineations, you know, they're using even Saptamshas like that, you know. They would just look at which Saptamsha or Drakana the moon or ascendant is, and they would, you know, add this to the outer appearance of the person. And it's interesting that in ancient Western astrology, the decans are called faces, you know, because they were really used for this, you know, to see the appearance of the person and the character, you know, based on where the ascendant falls. So this, according to what I found, was the primary use of the Drakana. But then what we find in Parashara is that he says to see it for siblings, happiness from siblings, which is unique because neither Kalyanvarma nor Varahamihira say so. They just mention the Drekana, and basically throughout the text, its use is very poorly documented. Believe it or not, all the Varga uses in the medieval texts are very scarcely documented. They mostly deal with the Navamsha. Various yogas, the Navamsha Lord, aspecting the ascendant and so on. So yeah, different uses, but it's interesting that Parashara says for siblings, because what we have in Drekana is the rulers of the same element ruling the sign. So it's, of the same element. So they are, like kinsmen.
And how time sensitive is the Drekana? Like how many minutes off can your birth time be to have a proper Drekana?
Oh, Drekana is 10 degrees, so a sign usually rises about 2 hours, so it's not very sensitive.
Yes, that's good.
I mean, even Navamsha is not all that sensitive unless, a planet is really at the border.
Yes, on the cusp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this kind of helps us solve this question, the geometry. Can Vargas be drawn as charts or not? Yes, the Parivriti Vargas can be, but the other Vargas cannot be because they're not based on angles. They're not based on angular relationship of 2 points. Because here, what we have, for example, in Drekana, we have 3 units. One unit is from Aries to Leo, and the second from Leo to Sagittarius, and the third from Sagittarius to Aries. So what we're doing in a Varga chart, when we make a Varga chart, we are simply conflating these 3 points that are, in the same angular relationship into 1 point. Or basically, we are stacking 3 units of 120 degrees upon each other. So it makes sense that, yes, the Parivriti Vargas, they can be used as charts, while these, the regular, so I would say contemporary Vargas, they cannot be used as charts because they're not based on geometry, but they are only based on the rulership.
Yeah, so you're a proponent of just like harmonious, symmetrical, geometrical structures, free-flowing.
Yeah, I mean, they make a lot of sense, don't they? I mean, they are natural, Some call it they are Brahma Vargas because it's just the natural order, but it's just getting, deeper and deeper. You're just getting on deeper and deeper levels,
Mm-hmm.
First, you're splitting a sign in half and you get the Parivriti Hora, So you have the order of the signs 2 times. And then you split in the circle in 3 parts and you get the Parivriti or harmonic Drekana. And then into 4 parts and you get the square. And then you can go further into 5 parts and you get the Parivriti Panchamsha. And you get this beautiful pentagon, which is the geometrical form of Jupiter. And it's not a coincidence that, many would look at the Panchamsha for children also, and
Yeah.
creativity. And Jaimini says for fame and power, it's all Jupiterian stuff, right?
Yes. But how far can you go with the geometrical figures?
Endless.
Endless.
Yeah. Yeah, but so far I haven't really dived into the higher numbers,
Yes.
beyond the 12, because when you get to the 12, it's already all the angular relationships are there because it's based on 13 degrees. So,
Mm-hmm.
all the major aspects that we find in Western astrology are present there. So for the 12th, I actually prefer the Dvadasamsha, which is non-harmonic, but
Oh.
it's a very specific type of Varga.
Mm-hmm.
We can maybe talk some other time, because it was heavily used in Hellenistic astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And really interesting that I found, far more documented use in Hellenistic texts than in Indian texts. It was really like the division. Like, the Navamsha is in Indian astrology, there it was Dvadasamsha, was like, this is what you look at.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. I mean, I see reason for you to use both of them. So
Yeah.
yeah. So we're gonna be meeting also another time to look more in depth at some Vargas.
Mm-hmm.
And before then, would you like to add anything else about this topic?
Sure. Because the next one, we get to Saptamsha and then Navamsha. And
Mm-hmm.
Saptamsha and Navamsha are the only Parivriti Vargas that are included in the usual schemes,
Yes.
The Navamsha in the Shadvarga scheme, and then they add Saptamsha for Saptavarga. And no other Varga in this scheme is harmonic, only these two. And it's interesting because, how will you divide a sign into 7 or 8? Based on what will you assign rulership? It's very difficult. Although Yavana Jataka actually does something like that for the Saptamsha, it introduces a different Saptamsha than what we're used to. But this is the ordinary Saptamsha commonly used, and we see a beautiful septagon forming a geometrical form of Saturn. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because we also, many of us have found that it works really well for relationships. And I found that a really good Saturn, in a nice relationship through Saptamsha can really help a person to accept lack, because good relationships are those where people are able to accept imperfections, to live with imperfections, So, okay, it's not fulfilling me entirely, but it's okay, that's a good Saturn.
And so in Vedic astrology, I mean, in the calculations that I know, usually we look at Jupiter as the Karakamsha for the Saptamsha.
Yeah.
But you say you've noticed that a good Saturn there is also, quite important.
Right. I mean, one approach is, which I find actually questionable, is to say, okay, the Saptamsha, because Parashara says it's for children, therefore Jupiter is the Karaka. What if Saturn is the Karaka? I mean, based on the number and geometry, and it simply says how well can you bear the responsibility of your actions, because children are a result of sexual intercourse.
I know, and also
you have to accept the responsibility for it,
Yes, because I know Saturn is also like a secondary Karaka for children, and Saturn is exalted in the 7th natural sign in Libra, so that would make sense. Yeah.
Right.
And so do you look at Saptamsha for other things, like for dating, or like for, like Ian Rao says, that Saptamsha is more for a woman's dating life and relationship fulfillment than for a man is more Navamsha?
No, what I've been testing it on is, like more concrete things that are manifestations of your actions, and how well will you cope with the consequences, So basically, for everything, also, any area of life that requires commitment and responsibility. And I actually wrote an article on the Saptamsha, which viewers can find on my webpage, when I have demonstrated it on 2 charts of kindergarten teachers. Because this is a vocation that requires a very big commitment and responsibility. It's very responsible. And it's interesting to see how important Karakas are conjunct to Navamsha. And I'm also showing there a method of superimposition. So basically you are taking the Navamsha positions and imposing them on the Rashi chart, on the main chart, and see which house this, the two planets that connect by Saptamsha, into which house of the Rashi chart they fall.
I
And
think
so far, this kind of implementation looks very promising.
I've seen Vic Dikara in the past overlying things, but more for compatibility. But also for career, he was like overlying Navamsha on other Vargas. So it's interesting how you use that. What is your website, Rok?
It's Rok Koritnik astrologer.com.
Yeah, I'm gonna link it in the description box. Yes. So what else is there to say for this session, and what are we keeping for the next one for our viewers?
Okay, for this session, I just wanted to introduce these different types of divisions and point out that yes, we can create Varga charts with Parivriti divisions, but not with the planetary ruler divisions, which is unfortunately done today, but actually I haven't found that working very well. That's also one of the reasons why I wanted to understand it more. But there are other divisions which are really, like taken really out of context, like Hora and Trimsamsha, which I would like to introduce next time. It's two very interesting divisions, but the way they are used today, it's extremely questionable because it doesn't have any basis in the texts. It's actually far more simple than what we are doing today. And then maybe I would also talk about the Dvadasamsha, because it's the Varga from which the Chaturtamsha and the Drekana are derived. They are very much related. And we can also see that, and maybe I could show the way the Hellenistic astrologers would use the Dvadasamsha, as it is very interesting. And it provided the basis of my further research for superimposing Vargas on the main chart. So it's like it's very interesting method that kind of blends the two. It's not that you're actually creating a separate chart with separate, entirely new set of houses, but what you're doing is you're just calculating the Varga positions of the planets, and you are putting them back in the Rashi chart. And for me, it was so far it's been the best way of doing it. It's for the first time that I'm actually like comfortable using the Vargas.
Yes, thank you.
That it's not just you just have all these extra charts, and now what do I do with all this?
Yeah, it looks quite confusing when you have like a full screen of like 5, 6, 7 Vargas there, and you're like, okay. It's true. So I think it's very interesting that you're doing this research, and it's great to see a new perspective on it, and especially with examples. So I'm looking forward to exploring the Hora and Trimsamsha and Dvadasamsha with you.
What I just wanted to add, I almost forgot, very important. The thing is that many Vedic softwares don't allow you to calculate Parivriti Vargas. Some only have, the default Shodasha Varga calculations. I think that, Jagannath Hora, it allows you to do Parivritis. The new version of Kala also has Parivriti Vargas available, but some softwares don't. And what I suggest, if the readers would like to experiment with them, you can do it on astro.com. It calculates what's called the harmonic charts for you, and then you can just, if you're used to a square chart, you can go to my webpage. I'll show it here. You can go to articles, and here's an article, blank charts for
you
Vargas.
Have to share another thing, because now we see still the
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Mhm. Let me see. And this. I'll stop the share. And yeah, here. Right. So here's, you just go to my website, menu, articles, and here's an article, blank charts for Vargas techniques. And here I included 3 PDFs. You just click on it and you can download it. So here's the South Indian square chart with places for 2 more Vargas around it. And you can just either calculate the Varga positions by hand, which I also describe in my article on Saptamsha, how you calculate by hand the Pariviti Vargas. Or you can go to astro.com, calculate the harmonic charts there, and then just place the planets here. And here's the North Indian chart if you want to do it with North Indian and even the old Hellenistic square chart. So it's fun to do it like this, by hand.
Yeah, by hand it's like a mudra, like you're joining your fingers and so it's pretty nice. It's like a small meditation when you write by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Rok, for coming today. You guys go check out Rok's website. And we'll see him again soon for the Horatrim Samsha and Dada Samsha. Okay. Bye, Rok.
Bye. Thank you.